Welcome to Black Women's Soul Stories. Layla knew the rules of the corporate world were often twisted against a brilliant black woman, but she thought her genius in the research and development lab was an iron shield. She believed her brilliance was enough to protect her legacy. That belief shattered the moment she saw CEO Nathan Sterling standing over her desk, his privileged hands rummaging through her private purse. He wasn't looking for money or office gossip. He was looking for weakness, and when he held up her small, worn journal containing the blueprint of her deepest trauma, Layla knew this was not an office invasion. This was a declaration of war. Before we dive in, please like and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because you will not want to miss how Layla transforms her pain into power. Layla Dixon smelled like a combination of ozone and victory. It was late, 2:15 in the morning. The kind of quiet hour where the vast glass office tower felt less like a corporation and more like her personal laboratory. She loved this time. The only sounds were the distant hum of the servers and the gentle clinking of her ceramic mug against the steel desk. Here in the heart of Sterling Technologies' research and development, she was simply Layla the inventor, the architect of the future. Not Layla the black single mother juggling bills, or Layla the survivor who carried the scars of an unfair fight. For 3 years, she had poured her life into Project Phoenix. It was a radical design for clean energy storage, something that would change the entire sector and incidentally secure her family's future forever. Tonight, she had reached the final milestone. The preliminary patent filing was ready to upload. A masterpiece born not just from intellect, but from the desperate need to ensure her daughter, Nevi, never knew the kind of financial fear that had once paralyzed Layla. She pushed her chair back and stood, stretching muscles that felt permanently fused to her spine. She needed coffee more than sleep. She grabbed her worn black purse, the one that had carried her through court hearings, job interviews, and countless late nights. It wasn't a designer bag, it was a tool. Inside, tucked deep beneath her wallet and emergency makeup kit, was the only truly private thing she kept at the office. It was a small leather-bound journal. It didn't contain equations or schematics. It contained the raw emotional notes of her past, the trauma of the brutal legal battle over her ex-husband's debt that had nearly ruined her credit and her sanity. Writing in it had been her therapy, a way to channel the white-hot shame and panic into the cold logic of her work. Layla knew that if her colleagues ever knew the true vulnerability beneath her polished professional veneer, they might question her stability, her judgment, her competence. Layla placed the purse carefully back under her desk chair in her usual spot. Habit. She made a mental note to take the journal home tomorrow morning before the sun rose. She walked out of the R&D lab toward the break room, humming a soft tune. The break room coffee was bitter and strong. Perfect. As she leaned against the counter scrolling quickly through photos of Nevi, she heard a sound. It wasn't a loud sound. It was the faint creak of the polished marble floor outside her private lab. That floor never creaked. Only the weight of a heavy leather shoe could make that sound. She froze. Her mind instantly flashed to the purse. The journal. Layla didn't hesitate. She set the mug down silently and walked back toward the lab corridor, her heart hammering against her ribs. She moved without a sound, her sneakers gripping the carpeted executive hallway. She reached the threshold of the R&D suite and peered around the corner. The lights were on, but the room felt heavy and wrong. And then she saw him. It wasn't a thief. It wasn't security. It was Nathan Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Technologies. The man whose face was on every motivational poster, the man who always shook her hand with a paternalistic warmth that now felt like oil. He was standing directly beside her desk chair. His expensive, tailored suit looked out of place in the functional lab setting. He was bent over. His back was to her, but his posture was unmistakable. He was doing something he should not be doing. Layla felt a cold terror that had nothing to do with fear for her safety and everything to do with fear for her reputation. She watched as Nathan Sterling straightened up slowly, like a predator stretching after a kill. In his hand, he held her purse. Her cheap, worn black purse. He flipped it upside down with a casual disrespect that made Layla's blood boil before he set it on the desk. He then began to methodically inspect the scattered contents. He picked up her keys, her worn leather wallet, and a tube of lipstick, dismissing them all with a flicker of his eyes. Layla remained hidden in the shadow of the doorway, unable to move. A thick lump formed in her throat, choking off any gasp or scream. Then his fingers paused. He picked up the small leather-bound journal. Layla could feel the heat of shame rising on her neck. It was happening. Her private life, her true self, was in his hands. Sterling didn't open it immediately. He looked around the empty room, a slow, calculating sweep that didn't land on her hiding spot. He was confident he was alone. That confidence was the most sickening part of the whole scene. Finally, he opened the journal. Layla saw his face shift. It wasn't amusement. It was recognition. And then calculation. He began to read, not skimming but reading with meticulous attention. His lips moved slightly, forming the words that laid bare her painful past, the details of the bankruptcy, the struggle with depression, the sheer panic she had overcome just to walk into that office every day, the deep emotional fuel that drove Project Phoenix. After what felt like an hour, Sterling carefully closed the journal. He held it up slightly, turning it over again in his palm. It was the action of a man who has just found the single most valuable piece of intelligence. Not technical data, but leverage. Sterling finally spoke. His voice was a low, smooth rumble completely alien in the stillness of the lab. He was talking to himself, but Layla heard every word. So that's what keeps you running. Fear, panic attacks, an unstable foundation for such brilliant work. He smiled. It was a cold, satisfied expression. He then walked over to the photocopy machine on the corner desk. He was not just reading it, he was copying it. He meticulously scanned the front and back pages and then carefully placed the original journal back exactly where he found it, tucking it beneath the wallet in her purse. He smoothed the bag down, trying to erase the evidence of his violation. He didn't know she had seen everything. He then held the sheet of copied paper. It was the summary page where she had written her true mission statement: turn the shame of debt into the power of energy independence. Sterling walked back to her desk and looked at the half-finished preliminary patent filing glowing on the screen. He looked from the screen to the copy of her journal in his hand. He leaned in close to the desk, his voice dropping to a near whisper. It was the most terrible thing Layla had ever heard. Layla is a magnificent mind, a true asset. He paused, his tone shifting to something subtly dangerous. But every system must be secured against failure, and instability is a weakness no matter how clever the packaging. He slipped the photocopy into the inside pocket of his expensive jacket. He checked his watch, straightened his tie. He walked out. His leather shoes clicked rhythmically down the corridor, their sound growing faint. Layla waited until she was sure he was gone. She walked into the lab slowly, as if navigating a minefield. She went straight to her chair and pulled the purse out. She reached inside, her hands trembling, and felt the smooth leather of the journal. It was there, physically intact, but the violation was complete. She sat down and looked at the patent filing on her screen, her masterpiece, now tainted. Sterling hadn't stolen the equations yet. He had stolen the reason for the equations. He had found the weapon to dismantle her credibility, to frame her passion as instability. Layla placed her hand over her chest, trying to steady her ragged breath. The fear was real, but the shame was gone. In its place was an icy, focused rage. She stood up. She wasn't just going to finish her patent. She was going to use the exact blueprint of her pain, the need for meticulous security and careful planning, to turn his weapon back on him. Nathan Sterling thought he held her weakness. He had just ensured his own destruction. She reached for her work computer and started hitting a key combination. She was done with trusting the system. It was time to build her firewall. She pulled a clean encrypted drive from her pocket and began systematically backing up every single file, every line of code, every email, and every calendar entry she had ever generated for Project Phoenix. He wanted to know what fueled her. He was about to find out. She finished the first major data dump and looked at the empty doorway where he had stood moments ago. The fear that had once frozen her was now a burning crystalline certainty. "You should never have touched my bag, Nathan," Layla whispered into the silence of the lab, "because now you have nothing left to hide." The morning after the violation, Layla felt every single emotion stripped down to a raw nerve ending. She didn't sleep. She sat in her living room watching the rising sun paint the apartment complex in bruised shades of purple and gray. Nevi, her daughter, was still sleeping soundly, and the sight of her small, peaceful face was the anchor Layla needed. It wasn't just about a career anymore. It was a hostile takeover of her life. She arrived at Sterling Technologies not at 2:15 in the morning, but at 8:30 sharp. She needed to look tired but professional. Like a dedicated employee, not a woman who had spent the night planning a CEO's downfall. Her mission was twofold. First, confirm the full extent of the data breach. Second, find the weakness in Nathan's defense. The moment she sat at her desk, the atmosphere felt different. The air was colder, the silence heavier. Layla opened Project Phoenix. She ran a full diagnostic on the system logs. Nothing was overtly missing. Sterling was too smart for a simple copy and paste job. He would have used a ghost program or perhaps the IT department itself to pull the key data silently. But one thing was undeniably gone. The preliminary patent file she had finalized and prepared for upload. It had vanished completely. No trace in the trash, no deletion log. It was wiped clean as if it had never existed on her drive. It was proof of the theft. He had not just copied her secret, he had stolen her future. A few minutes later, a chime sounded on her internal messenger. It was a meeting request from Nathan Sterling himself. Immediate. CEO office. Layla took a long, slow breath. This was the trap. She put on her best neutral face and walked the immaculate distance to the executive floor. The CEO's office was all glass and pristine white leather, a visual metaphor for his superficial transparency and real-life untouchability. Sterling rose from his chair when she entered, extending his hand with that sickeningly warm paternal smile. "Layla, my magnificent mind, come sit down." She took the seat opposite him. He didn't mention the night before, the purse, or the journal. He went straight to the attack. "Project Phoenix is moving too slow, Layla. The board is demanding results. We need to accelerate this entire initiative." He leaned forward, his tone confiding. "And Layla, I have to be honest. I am concerned about you." He paused, letting the word concerned hang in the air like a threat. "Your recent hours, your intense focus, it's admirable, but I saw the fatigue yesterday. I saw the strain, the kind of strain that sometimes compromises judgment." Layla felt the heat rise on her neck. He was referencing the journal. He didn't need to say the word instability. The implication was enough to silence her. He was painting her dedication as instability. "I need to reassign you, Layla," he continued, his voice laced with false sympathy, "to ensure the integrity of Project Phoenix and to give you the mental break you deserve." Layla gripped the edge of the leather chair. "Reassign me, sir. I finalized the patent filing last night. I am the only person who can usher this through." Sterling waved his hand dismissively. The technical aspects are mostly complete. We have a competent team to handle the rollout. We have already brought on specialists to review the final details. Layla knew what that meant. He had already installed his own people to steal the credit and make sure her name disappeared from the official records. Your new assignment, Sterling said with a sharp smile, is to oversee the technical specifications for the new European market rollout. It's important but less demanding. And Layla, this is confidential. A necessary move to maintain your well-being. It is about protecting you from yourself. He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Take a few days, see your daughter, then come back refreshed and ready for your new role. And Layla, he fixed her with a hard blue stare. Rest assured, I will personally handle the presentation of Project Phoenix to the board next week. You are simply too valuable to risk burnout. As Layla walked out, the true weight of the situation landed on her. He hadn't just stolen her work. He had neutralized her. He had removed her from the primary battlefield and used her deepest vulnerability as the reason. He had executed the perfect corporate gaslight. She returned to her lab and found a new face hovering over her desk, a young, ambitious man named Marcus. Marcus had started 6 months ago in a support role. He was always friendly, always asking about Nevi, always seeming to be an ally. "Hey Layla," Marcus chirped, looking far too eager. "Mr. Sterling just told me the news. Sucks about the reassignment, but hey, you deserve a break, right?" Layla forced a smile. "I suppose. Marcus, what are you doing in here?" "Oh, Mr. Sterling sent me up. Said I needed to transfer all the historical data from your system to the primary server for the new specialists to review, just making sure I get everything copied over cleanly." Layla felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Marcus was the cleanup crew. He was ensuring that her encrypted backups, the ones she had made the night before, were the only copies she had. Sterling was burning the bridge behind her. "Thank you, Marcus," Layla said, her voice steady despite the seismic shift in her gut. "But I need to check the files first before you transfer anything." "Protocol." Marcus hesitated for only a second. "Sure, Layla, just thought I could save you some time." He stepped away but lingered near the door. Layla sat down and pulled up her internal email. She went back through the last 6 months of correspondence with Marcus. Small things she had missed before now screamed betrayal. "That was a late night. I hope you're okay. I was just letting Mr. Sterling know you were still here, making sure you got home safe. I heard you were feeling a bit under the weather earlier. Don't push yourself. The CEO mentioned he wants to keep an eye on his top talent." Every message that had seemed supportive was a coded report. Marcus wasn't an ally. He was the CEO's eyes and ears. He had been reporting on her fatigue, her late hours, her stress levels. He had been quantifying her instability for Sterling. Layla had confided in him about her past anxiety, about the difficulty of juggling single parenthood and the project's intensity. She had given him the rope to hang her with. She looked up. Marcus was still standing near the door, scrolling intently on his phone. Layla minimized the work screen and opened a blank document. She began typing an email, but she didn't send it. She typed furiously, detailing the betrayal, the reassignment, the stolen patent filing, and her plan for revenge. She wrote it as if it were a confessional, the truest thoughts in her mind. Then she made a calculated error. She stood up abruptly, pretending to get a glass of water, and left the unsent email visible on her desktop. Marcus glanced up. He watched her walk away. Layla stood around the corner of the lab, just out of sight, and waited. She heard the faint clicking of keys rapidly being typed. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Marcus was reading her confessional. Layla walked back in. Marcus jumped back from the desk, his face flushed guiltily. I just finished up the transfer, Layla, just making sure the files were clean." "They were clean, Marcus," Layla said, her eyes locked on his. She didn't acknowledge the email she had left open. "You can go now." Marcus practically ran out of the room. Layla sat down and deleted the fake confessional. She smiled a cold, hard smile. Sterling would get the report from Marcus within the hour. The report would say Layla is stressed, Layla is paranoid, Layla is ranting in unsent emails about conspiracy and theft. Layla is proving herself unstable. Sterling's plan was now simple. He would present the patent as his own using his team. If Layla dared to fight back, he would pull out the photocopied journal and Marcus's reports to dismiss her as a volatile single mother experiencing a professional breakdown. He had perfectly framed her brilliance as manic obsession, but Layla had the real encrypted data. And now Sterling thought he knew her strategy: angry confrontation. He was wrong. Her strategy was patience. It was quiet, meticulous, and it was going to dismantle him piece by piece. She opened the encrypted drive she had used last night and began a new file, not Project Phoenix. She named it Project Nemesis. The first entry was a date, the date she saw him holding her shame. The second entry was a realization that the worst kind of betrayal isn't a sudden knife in the back. It is the slow decay of a trusted friendship. Marcus was a casualty of Sterling's war, but he was also a weapon that Layla would now use against his own master. She would feed Marcus exactly what Sterling needed to believe: that she was breaking, that she was predictable. Layla picked up her purse and adjusted the small leather journal. It was no longer a secret source of shame. It was the emotional blueprint of a fight she was trained to win. She had survived bankruptcy and public humiliation once. She was not about to lose the rematch. She logged off her computer, leaving her old role behind her. She walked through the executive hall to her new satellite office. The air felt heavy with his expectation of her surrender. He was waiting for her to cry or quit. But Black women's soul stories are not about quitting. They are about turning pain into the power to rebuild and destroy. She took the day off as instructed by Sterling, not to rest, but to gather the first resources for her counterattack. She needed a technical audit of the corporate system that only a retired veteran could provide. She needed a safe house for her data. And most importantly, she needed an ally who knew how corporate monsters like Nathan Sterling operated and how they fell. Layla stepped out of the vast glass tower into the bright sunlight. She was alone but not defeated. The clock was ticking toward the board meeting, and the world was about to find out that the CEO who stole a Black single mom's secret had just signed the death warrant for his entire empire. She walked with purpose, the weight of her journal now feeling like a badge of honor. Layla spent the next 4 days in a state of hyper-awareness. She was physically present at Sterling Technologies in her useless European market office, but mentally she was a ghost operating behind enemy lines. She had used the time to finalize the encryption on her Project Nemesis drive and to make one crucial, discreet phone call to a woman she hadn't spoken to in over a year. A woman named Anya Bell. Anya Bell was a legend. A retired executive who had helped build Sterling Technologies before Nathan Sterling ruthlessly pushed her out during a hostile takeover a decade prior. Anya had the resources, the knowledge, and most importantly the motive to see Nathan fall. Layla knew Anya would be attending the board meeting next Tuesday as an independent observer, a figurehead of the company's past success. Layla's call was short, cryptic, and delivered one clear message: Nathan Sterling is stealing Layla's future and he is using her past to do it. You need to watch the board meeting closely. Anya simply replied, I hear you, Layla. I will be watching. Tuesday arrived. Layla was not invited to the board meeting. She was supposed to be reviewing obscure EU regulatory documents in her satellite office on the opposite side of the campus. But Layla had a key card and a plan. She was not going to crash the meeting. She was going to observe the crash. She positioned herself in an empty conference room directly across the hall from the main executive board room. The door was heavy and soundproofed, but Layla had a specialized piece of equipment she had acquired from an old R&D contact, a directional microphone designed to pick up specific frequencies through thick material. It was technical but necessary. The sound in her earpiece was muffled but clear enough. She could hear the drone of voices, the heavy acoustics of the room. Nathan Sterling was speaking. His voice was smooth, confident, triumphant. "Gentlemen and ladies, welcome to the future of Sterling Technologies. I present to you the Phoenix Initiative." Layla leaned against the cold glass wall of the empty conference room, closing her eyes. She heard him launch into the presentation using her slides, her data, her meticulously crafted arguments for clean energy storage. He even used her favorite analogy about turning sand into glass. Every word was hers, but the voice delivering it was his. The betrayal was like a physical punch to the gut. Then Sterling started to speak about the genius behind the initiative. Layla waited for her name. Her name, Layla Dixon, the senior R&D scientist. "This project," Sterling announced dramatically, "is the result of intensive collaboration and tireless work by our dedicated team. While I can't name every contributor, I can assure you that the success here reflects the singular vision of the company's leadership to anticipate market needs and execute flawlessly." Silence. Layla's name was gone, erased, reduced to an unnamed team member. Then came the calculated twist. A board member, a gruff voice Layla recognized as Mr. Thompson, interrupted. "Nathan, if this is so close to launch, why did we receive that internal memo about the lead scientist being abruptly reassigned to regulatory work? We were told this Layla Dixon was integral to the technical architecture." Layla gripped the directional mic in her hand. The tension in the room thickened. This was where he would use the leverage. Sterling's voice became soft, sympathetic, and almost sorrowful. "Thank you for bringing that up, Thompson. This is a sensitive internal matter, but since you asked, I will be transparent. Miss Dixon is indeed brilliant, absolutely brilliant." He paused, making the compliment feel like a heavy weight. However, the intensive pressure of Project Phoenix proved too much for her to handle responsibly. This project is a multi-billion-dollar undertaking and requires singular, focused, and stable leadership. Layla heard the emphasis on the word stable. She knew what was coming next. The emotional violence he was about to inflict. "We discovered some concerning patterns in her behavior," Sterling continued smoothly. "Long hours fueled by significant personal stress and past struggles with panic and financial duress. We are an ethical company. We had to make a professional determination that for the security of the project, and frankly for Miss Dixon's own well-being, she needed a less demanding environment." He was using the contents of her private journal to cast doubt on her professional competence. He was painting her previous bankruptcy struggles as a mental health crisis. He had weaponized her pain and wrapped it in the guise of compassionate concern. Layla's breath hitched in her throat. She could almost see his fake, concerned face. She felt a wave of nausea and shame. It was one thing to know he had the secret. It was another to hear it used in a cold boardroom to dismantle her entire career. This was the humiliation, the complete erasure she had feared. She closed her eyes, briefly trying to control the fierce trembling in her hands. She reminded herself, "He wants me to feel broken. He wants me to confirm his lie by reacting." A soft voice cut through the sterile tension in the earpiece. It was a voice that commanded immediate attention. "Anya Bell." "Mr. Sterling, I take exception to the use of a senior employee's personal history in this forum." Anya's voice was sharp, refined, and utterly fearless. Miss Dixon was hired because she showed remarkable resilience in the face of financial catastrophe. If anything, that resilience should be seen as a strength, not a weakness to justify reassigning her just before patent filing. Sterling faltered slightly. With all due respect, Mrs. Bell, Miss Dixon is a single mother, and this kind of pressure. I was a single mother when I founded the R&D department that made this company profitable, Nathan. Anya cut him off, the silence in the boardroom screaming. And I have never found resilience to be an indicator of instability. I find your explanation suspiciously convenient, coming just as you are taking sole credit for her innovation. Layla felt a sudden rush of hope. Anya Bell was not just watching. She was fighting. Sterling recovered quickly, his tone icy. Anya, you are an observer. We are talking about confidential HR matters that only the board needs to be privy to. Please keep your comments focused on the technical presentation. Anya simply stated, "Very well. Then let us focus on the technical presentation. Nathan, tell the board why the preliminary stress tests conducted on the core element of the Phoenix storage unit show a critical temperature spike that Layla Dixon explicitly warned about in her internal review memo last month." Total silence crashed over the boardroom. Layla hadn't even heard Sterling address the stress tests. She hadn't even mentioned that specific memo to Anya. Anya had done her homework. She had acquired internal documents Layla herself hadn't been able to retrieve. Sterling stammered for the first time. "The spike is a minor calibration issue. It will be corrected before launch. It does not affect the core viability of the technology." Anya's voice was a low growl. "It affects the ability of the unit to operate safely in any ambient temperature above 35 degrees Celsius. If Miss Dixon warned you about this, and you dismissed it while simultaneously questioning her stability, I would suggest the instability is not hers." Layla allowed herself a small, silent, victorious gasp. Anya was a magnificent ally. She had completely shifted the narrative from Layla's personal shame to Sterling's professional negligence and potential deception. Sterling concluded the meeting abruptly, promising a full technical review and immediately ending the presentation on a sour note. Layla waited until she heard the heavy boardroom door open and the sound of footsteps dispersing. She quickly emerged from her hiding place. Anya Bell was standing alone in the hallway waiting. She was a tall, elegant black woman whose silver hair was pulled back in a sharp coil. She wore a tailored black suit that looked infinitely more expensive and powerful than Sterling's. "Anya," Layla whispered, walking quickly towards her. Anya didn't smile. Her expression was solemn. "He is a fool, Layla, a common thief with a powerful title, and he has a photocopied sheet of paper from a leather journal that he thinks is his insurance policy." "You heard him use it," Layla said, the shame momentarily resurfacing. "I heard him try to use it," Anya corrected her, her voice firm. "He thought he found your weakness. He didn't. He found the source of your focus. Now we use that source to take everything he cares about." Anya leaned closer, her voice dropping low and confidential. "I need to know everything, Layla. Every email, every log, every piece of data. He has already used my history against me to keep me quiet. He will use your child against you next. You have exactly 48 hours to give me access to everything you have created. I need to expose his entire history, not just this current theft." Layla reached into her bag and pulled out the small, encrypted drive. She handed it to Anya. "This is Project Nemesis. Every piece of code, every communication from Marcus, every piece of evidence of his digital tracking. I have been building this since the night he went through my purse." Anya took the drive, her eyes widening slightly in approval. "You are not just brilliant, Layla, you are strategic. You moved from fear to fire instantly. That is power." "He stole my future, Anya," Layla stated simply. "I intend to repossess his past." Good, Anya said, nodding once decisively. I have access to systems he doesn't even know exist. I can trace his previous victims, his NDAs, his financial crimes. You handle the technological defense. I handle the systemic demolition. Anya quickly turned and walked toward the elevators. Before the doors closed, she looked at Layla one last time. Do not show your face here until I tell you to, Layla. He will be watching you closely now. Let him think you are broken and reviewing regulations. Let him think the battle is over. The true fight has just begun. The elevator doors closed, leaving Layla standing alone in the empty executive hallway. She was still reeling from the public humiliation, but the shame had been replaced entirely by a cold, hard resolve. She had witnessed the weaponization of her pain, but she had also secured the ultimate ally. The board meeting was just the first skirmish. The war would be fought in the shadows, and the outcome would be Nathan Sterling losing more than just his company. He was going to lose his legacy. The hours immediately following the board meeting were dedicated to silence and meticulous work. Layla obeyed Anya's command and did not return to the main Sterling campus. She rented a small, secure co-working space downtown, far from any familiar corporate sightlines. Anya Bell was the engine of this operation, but Layla was the technician. Layla's task was to analyze the data on Project Nemesis and prepare a comprehensive technical vulnerability report on Sterling's corporate infrastructure. She sat hunched over her laptop, the encrypted drive humming softly on the desk beside her. She had built this project not just out of ambition, but out of absolute necessity. Now the same necessity fueled her revenge. The first thing Layla analyzed was the log of Marcus's activities. The young man had been thorough. Every interaction with Layla had been meticulously documented and forwarded to Sterling's private email address. Marcus wasn't just reporting her stress, he was actively performing digital espionage. He had used a common keylogger disguised as a software update to monitor her personal communications, and was specifically ordered to look for anything relating to her family or her past legal troubles. Layla was able to trace the communication thread deeper. Sterling's private email wasn't just receiving Marcus's reports. It was communicating with a third party, a high-end, discreet corporate consulting firm specializing in reputation management and internal risk mitigation. This firm wasn't just covering up theft. They specialized in destroying the credibility of high-value targets. Layla realized Sterling didn't see her as just an employee, he saw her as an immediate threat requiring professional termination. The discovery shifted Layla's focus from mere theft to systemic abuse. She began mining the corporate server backups Anya had provided access to, specifically looking for historical cases handled by that same reputation management firm. The results were sickening. Layla discovered 3 previous incidents over the last 5 years. 3 brilliant female innovators within Sterling Technologies who had brought forward groundbreaking projects similar in scale to Project Phoenix. Each of those women had abruptly left the company under mysterious circumstances right before their projects were launched and claimed by Sterling. The pattern was identical. The women had been praised highly, then subtly undermined. Their emotional history, be it divorce, grief, or illness, was leaked to internal sources. They were publicly characterized as unstable or burnt out, and were forced to sign massive non-disclosure agreements in exchange for a small severance package. Sterling wasn't just a thief. He was a serial exploiter of Black and brown women's emotional and professional labor. One name stood out: Dr. Naomi Vance. Naomi was a pioneering chemist whose work in biofuels had been central to Sterling's stock surge 5 years ago. Naomi's departure was officially listed as early retirement due to stress. Layla found the detailed notes from the reputation firm recommending the exact language Sterling had used against Layla. Brilliant, but suffering from debilitating personal issues. Layla felt a surge of cold fury. This wasn't personal anymore. This was a mission of justice for every woman Nathan Sterling had silenced. Meanwhile, Anya Bell was operating in a different sphere. She was utilizing her old board connections and financial auditors who still owed her favors. Layla and Anya met secretly at a quiet jazz club downtown, the kind of place where business was conducted in hushed, respectful tones. "He is vulnerable, Layla," Anya said, swirling the ice in her glass. "The temperature spike you warned about in your internal memo is not a mistake. It is a cost-cutting measure. Sterling rushed the project to market and substituted a cheaper component. If this is publicly exposed, it is not just technical failure. It is criminal negligence and shareholder fraud." "But he can still use the journal and Marcus's reports to discredit my warning," Layla countered, her voice low and steady. "He'll claim I flagged it because of my supposed panic disorder, not because of science." "That is where the ghost in the machine comes in," Anya replied with a thin smile. "I found a way to use his paranoia against him. Sterling is terrified of digital trails. He doesn't use company email for anything truly sensitive. He prefers encrypted internal chat programs that wipe logs every 6 hours. I have access to the archives of that chat program." Anya slid a tablet across the table. The screen showed an exchange from 3 weeks ago between Sterling and his reputation consultant. "The Dixon situation is volatile. Ensure all communications regarding her instability are verbal or run through RMF's external secure server." "RMF, understood, but you must secure the IP immediately. If she files the patent, your personal concerns look fraudulent." Layla read the screen twice. He knew the risk of her filing the patent. He knew I was stable. He manufactured the crisis." "Exactly," Anya confirmed. "He is building a mountain of lies to cover a hole of theft. But here is the critical move, Layla. You need to contact Naomi Vance. She is the key witness to his pattern of behavior. Breaking her NDA will give us the systemic proof. My lawyers can defend her, but she has to be ready to testify." Layla hesitated. Contacting Naomi meant pulling a deeply scarred woman back into a trauma she had paid a heavy price to escape. "She runs a small independent lab now in Austin," Anya supplied. "She is thriving, but she is still wounded. She needs to know that this isn't just about revenge. It's about dismantling the entire system that broke her and that is trying to break you." "I'll reach out to her today," Layla confirmed, her resolve hardening. "But I need one more technical advantage. Sterling is relying on Marcus to prove my instability. I need to feed Marcus a perfectly believable piece of misinformation that will make the technical flaw in the Phoenix initiative look like my error and not his cost-cutting measure." Anya leaned back approvingly. "You want to set a trap. You want to make him rush to fix the wrong problem. Brilliant." "The best lie is always half the truth." Layla pulled out her laptop. "Marcus is still transferring my old data logs. I can modify the time stamp on the internal memo regarding the temperature spike and route it through a seemingly compromised file. Marcus will find the file, accidentally, and forward it to Sterling, proving that I was unstable and negligent, and therefore the fault lies with the original design." "And while he is busy fixing your fake error," Anya mused, "the true criminal negligence will be left wide open for my auditors to find. It's elegant, Layla. You are not fighting him head-on. You are causing him to destroy himself." Layla ran her fingers over the leather journal. It was no longer a secret. It was the foundation of the meticulous, cold-blooded strategy she was executing. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a master planner. The fear was gone, replaced entirely by the methodical, unyielding focus of Project Nemesis. The stakes were clear. If this worked, Sterling would be exposed as a fraudster who risked public safety for profit. If it failed, Layla would be dismissed as a delusional, disgruntled former employee whose history of trauma finally caught up with her. The game of corporate chess was on, and Layla Dixon was about to prove that a black single mother's pain was the single most powerful and strategic weapon on the board. The ghost of Naomi Vance's past was about to join Layla's team, and together they would ensure that Sterling's corporate empire did not survive the spring. Layla moved with the quiet efficiency of a sniper. The first crucial task was setting the decoy for Marcus. She needed to create a convincing, technical lie that Nathan Sterling would immediately seize upon as definitive proof of Layla's negligence. She was operating under the guise of packing up her desk, but she was truly conducting a digital infiltration. She accessed the Sterling Technologies server remotely through a highly secured VPN. Marcus, still diligently cleaning up Layla's mess in her old lab, would be the unsuspecting courier. Layla modified a non-critical diagnostic report from the early stages of Project Phoenix, changing the timestamp to appear as if she had missed an early warning sign about a minor power bleed issue, not the major temperature spike Sterling was actually covering up. This fabricated flaw was complex enough to demand his immediate technical attention, but inconsequential enough to not immediately trigger a government investigation. Layla intentionally left this modified file in a loosely protected folder labeled Pre-Filing Errors Draft. She knew Marcus, hungry for a major find to solidify his status with the CEO, would scan every folder. She also knew that the CEO, paranoid about being exposed, would trust any internal document that confirmed Layla's instability narrative. The trap was sprung within 3 hours. Layla monitored the access logs. Marcus located the file. The file was copied. Within minutes, the file was attached to a panicked internal chat message from Marcus to Sterling, accompanied by the text, "She knew about this early, sir. She ignored it." This proves she was cutting corners when the project became unstable. Layla watched the exchange and felt a chilling satisfaction. Sterling had taken the bait. He would waste precious time and resources patching a non-existent design flaw while Anya's auditors zeroed in on the real criminal negligence. With the technical trap set, Layla turned to the emotional challenge, recruiting Dr. Naomi Vance. She found Naomi's contact information and sent a single, carefully worded email. It didn't mention revenge or lawsuits. It only mentioned Nathan Sterling, Project Phoenix, and the same reputation management firm that handled her exit. Naomi Vance called back an hour later. Her voice was guarded, laced with the fatigue of a long-fought battle. They agreed to meet at a secure, neutral location, a high-end art gallery cafe where conversations were generally ignored and acoustics were poor. Layla recognized Naomi immediately. A woman in her mid-40s, poised and elegant, carrying the unmistakable stiffness of someone who had been wounded deeply in a professional setting. They ordered tea, avoiding any discussion of work until their quiet corner table was secured. "Layla Dixon," Naomi stated, her eyes sharp and assessing. "I remember the news cycles about Project Phoenix. Brilliant work. Thank you, Dr. Vance. I am here because I am in a similar situation to the one you faced 5 years ago," Layla began, her voice low and earnest. "Nathan Sterling is preparing to launch Phoenix under his name, and he is using my personal history to discredit me." Naomi's expression hardened. The instability narrative, the professional gaslighting, the slow death by rumor. Exactly. But he is not just using rumors, Naomi. He is using specific tactics developed by the same corporate reputation firm that managed your exit, Layla revealed, pushing a small encrypted folder across the table. This folder contains proof of a pattern: 3 high-value female innovators over 5 years, all brilliant, all forced out with NDAs, all branded unstable. Naomi didn't touch the folder. Her hands were clasped tightly around her teacup. "I signed the papers, Layla. I took the money. It was the price of my peace. He threatened my research grants and he threatened the reputation of my family. The NDA is ironclad. I know it is ironclad. That is why I am not asking you to break it for a lawsuit," Layla explained, leaning in. Anya Bell, the former board member, is handling the legal and financial investigation. We are not just suing for damages. We are preparing a case for shareholder fraud and criminal negligence regarding the Phoenix Initiative's flawed launch. She paused, letting the magnitude of the statement sink in. Sterling is cutting corners and risking public safety to rush my project to market. He is committing crimes, Naomi, not just corporate theft. If you testify about the pattern of his behavior, it establishes the malicious intent necessary to break your NDA due to a broader criminal enterprise. Your testimony won't just benefit me, it will dismantle the system that took your legacy. Naomi looked down at the folder. She was silent for a long moment, the sounds of the bustling cafe seeming miles away. "I remember that shame, Layla, that feeling of being so professionally powerful but personally gutted. He found the thing I was most insecure about, my inability to balance work and my mother's illness, and he used it to prove I was unfit to lead. And he is using my financial trauma and my struggles as a single mother to prove I'm unfit to invent," Layla finished softly. "He sees our pain as a vulnerability he can steal, but our pain is what made us meticulous. It made us survivors. Now, let's make it our weapon." Naomi finally reached out and pulled the folder toward her. She opened it and began reading Layla's compiled evidence. The names of the other women, the matching language in the reputation firm's reports, the timeline of betrayal. A slow, terrifying realization dawned on her face. "He didn't just target me because I was weak," Naomi breathed out. "He targeted me because I was a woman of color on the verge of too much power. He knew the system would naturally doubt my stability over his word." She closed the folder with a decisive snap. The sound was quiet but final. "I will testify, Layla, not for the money and not just for revenge. I will testify to stop him from doing this to the next brilliant black woman who walks through that door." Layla felt a rush of vindication. She had found her double agent, a woman who was not just a witness but a powerful, wounded warrior ready to fight. "Anya's team will contact you. They will protect you," Layla assured her. "I need you to prepare your personal history documentation, everything you kept from that time. The more detail we have, the cleaner his execution will be." Layla left the cafe knowing she had secured 2 critical pieces: the technical smokescreen to distract Sterling, and the emotional anchor in Naomi Vance to prove the systemic pattern of his abuse. As she drove away, she imagined Marcus, the eager puppy, rushing into Sterling's office with the pre-filing error data. Sterling would be too preoccupied fixing the decoy flaw, too secure in his belief that Layla was breaking down and sending desperate, flawed data. He would think he was controlling her demise. But Layla was the ghost in the machine now. She was controlling the technical chaos, and Anya was preparing the historical detonation. The next board meeting would not be about a technical review. It would be about an investigation that would end Nathan Sterling's reign. Layla's heart pounded, not with panic, but with the exhilaration of moving the final pieces into place. The moment of reckoning was close. The air in the boardroom was thick with pretense and panic. Nathan Sterling was attempting to reassure the board about the technical integrity of the Phoenix initiative. The decoy Layla had planted was working perfectly. Sterling had spent the last 24 hours frantically trying to explain away the pre-filing error that Marcus had dutifully delivered. He was sweating slightly under the collar of his custom shirt. Anya Bell sat at the end of the long mahogany table, radiating cold authority. She had called this emergency meeting citing new concerns regarding Project Phoenix's financial viability and its senior leadership. Layla was sitting beside her looking calm and almost detached. She wore a tailored suit the color of smoke, a deliberate choice to look like a fixture of the corporate environment, not a panicked intruder. Sterling looked at Layla with barely concealed contempt. He had expected her to be weeping or screaming, not sitting next to Anya Bell holding a portfolio like a seasoned lawyer. As I was explaining, Sterling began, his voice too loud. The supposed flaw in the original R&D submission was addressed. It was a failure in protocol, a mistake made during the early stages when the project was still under, shall we say, unstable management. He looked directly at Layla and gave a condescending smirk, a clear reference to the photocopied journal he carried. Anya placed her hand on the table, silencing the room with the gesture. Mr. Sterling, we are not here to discuss early drafts. We are here to discuss a systemic pattern of financial malfeasance and professional exploitation that jeopardizes this company's reputation and stock price. Sterling laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Malfeasance. Anya, you have been retired for 10 years. You cannot possibly understand the demands of modern innovation. This is a personal vendetta because I took over your old role. And sitting next to you is a woman whom we had to professionally sideline due to her documented instability. He reached inside his jacket, pulling out the folded copy of Layla's journal page. If you wish to discuss Layla Dixon's history, I can provide documents that clearly show her struggles with panic and her inability to handle high-pressure finance. We showed her compassion, Anya. We didn't fire her. We gently moved her aside. Layla leaned forward before Anya could respond. Her voice was steady and quiet, every word clearly enunciated for the recording device she knew was running. Mr. Sterling, you claim I was sidelined for instability. Yet in the past 72 hours, you have diverted $200,000 of company resources to fix a flaw that only exists in a draft document. If I was so unstable, why were you relying on the data that I supposedly submitted? Sterling faltered. That is confidential technical data, Miss Dixon, and you are here only as an observer for Mrs. Bell. You have no right to question company decisions. I have every right. Layla countered, her gaze unwavering. I designed the project, I am the inventor, and unlike you, Mr. Sterling, I am not a common thief. The word hung heavy in the air. A stunned silence fell over the board members. Anya took over immediately. Layla is correct. Nathan, we have evidence that this is not an isolated incident of corporate theft. This is a pattern. And to prove that pattern, I have called a special witness today who has been waiting 5 years for justice. The boardroom door opened. Dr. Naomi Vance walked in. She was impeccably dressed and composed, but her eyes held the fierce light of long-suppressed anger. She sat down at the witness table, and the gravity of the meeting shifted instantly. Sterling's color drained from his face. Naomi, what are you doing here? You signed a non-disclosure agreement. You are violating your contract. I am violating an agreement based on fraud, Naomi stated, her voice ringing with clarity. I am here to testify that 5 years ago Nathan Sterling used a personal tragedy in my life to force me out of this company right before he claimed credit for my biofuel patents. He branded me unstable and threatened my family if I didn't sign the NDA. The tactics he is using against Layla Dixon are identical to the ones he used against me and at least 2 other female inventors. She presented 3 bound folders detailing the parallel circumstances of their departures. Sterling scrambled to find words. "This is ridiculous. This is a conspiracy. These women are clearly disgruntled former employees. They have coordinated this to damage the company." "If that were true, Nathan," Anya interjected smoothly, "then let's look at the damage you have caused this company. My auditors have discovered that when you rushed Project Phoenix to launch, you substituted a critical cooling component with a cheaper, less efficient element. This was not Layla's design. This was a direct decision by you to cut costs." Anya projected a complex technical schematic onto the wall screen showing the substitution. Layla's original warning memo about the temperature spike was displayed side by side with Sterling's signed procurement order for the inferior part. "This is the real instability, Mr. Sterling," Anya declared. "It is criminal negligence. The temperature spike Layla warned about in her original, uncorrupted file is critical. If launched, this project will fail in high ambient temperatures, creating a dangerous public hazard and a catastrophic financial loss for our shareholders. You stole the idea and then you risked the entire company to make a fraudulent profit." The board erupted in frantic side conversations. The combination of the pattern of professional abuse, Naomi's physical presence, and the undeniable evidence of criminal negligence was overwhelming. Sterling knew the game was lost professionally. He discarded the boardroom rules and resorted to his last remaining weapon, the personal attack. He looked directly at Layla, his face twisted with malice. "You want to talk about stability, Layla? Let's talk about the stability of your child's home." Layla felt a chilling, immediate panic. He had gone too far. "I have Marcus's reports," Sterling hissed, pulling out a second sheet of paper, this one detailing the reports from the mole. "They document your erratic late-night hours, your obvious stress, and your paranoia. A professional audit will easily show that your intense focus on this project has led to neglect of your child, Nevi. Do you think a court will consider you a stable guardian when they see how you prioritized corporate revenge over your daughter's well-being?" The threat was vile, calculated to terrify Layla into immediate silence. The board members looked shocked and uncomfortable. Layla refused to break. The love for Nevi was not a weakness. It was her shield. She took a slow, deep breath, looking straight into Sterling's desperate eyes. "Mr. Sterling, you have just proven your desperate inability to fight fair. You have resorted to threatening a child." She opened her portfolio and pulled out a neatly organized file. "I anticipated this, Nathan, because a man who steals corporate ideas will certainly steal personal boundaries. This is a custody and financial audit prepared by an independent firm," Layla announced, laying the file on the table. "It details every hour I spent in the office, every day I spent with my daughter, every financial decision I have made since my divorce." "But more importantly," Layla continued, her voice ringing with finality, "this file contains the true financial history of your marriage. While I was struggling to keep my credit intact, and my child-fed you were systematically draining corporate funds and hiding assets from your wife's divorce lawyers. My team found digital logs proving you used company resources and time to commit tax fraud and asset hiding. I have the evidence of your financial crimes ready to be delivered to the federal authorities and to your wife's attorney." Sterling stumbled back, hitting the wall behind him. His face was pure shock. He had believed Layla was only focused on Project Phoenix. He had never imagined she would turn her meticulous attention to his personal hidden crimes. "You stole my secret, Nathan," Layla finished, her voice cold and absolute. "But I found your truth. Your marriage, your assets, and your freedom are over." He stared at the file, a defeated look washing over him. The board members were now frantically signaling for the company council. The theft was bad, the criminal negligence was worse, but the exposure of the CEO's personal fraud was the final blow. Layla looked at Anya and Naomi. The three women shared a look of cold, justified triumph. Nathan Sterling had just lost everything. The boardroom descended into chaos. Not the chaos of yelling, but the chilling, immediate sound of powerful men whispering frantically and dialing lawyers. Layla's revelation about Nathan Sterling's personal financial fraud was the poison dart that brought down the entire house. Corporate theft was a lawsuit. Criminal negligence was a PR disaster. But tax fraud and asset hiding were federal charges, and they implicated the entire structure he had built. The company counsel, a pale, twitchy man named Mr. Harrington, rushed to the head of the table. He didn't even address Sterling. He addressed the board chairman, Mr. Davies. "Sir, we need an immediate vote. Based on the documented evidence of fraud, the clear conflict of interest regarding the Project Phoenix components, and the credible, corroborated testimony of Dr. Vance, Mr. Sterling is an existential risk to this company's valuation." Davies, a veteran who had seen corporate empires rise and fall, didn't hesitate. He looked at Sterling, who was leaning against the wall, breathing heavily. "Nathan Sterling, you are terminated from your position as CEO, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises after you relinquish all company devices and property." Sterling didn't move. He simply stared at Layla, a look of pure, concentrated hatred burning in his eyes. He had lost the company he had stolen and built, but he was fixated on the black single mother who had orchestrated his downfall. "You think you won, Dixon," Sterling finally managed, his voice a low, ragged whisper. "You think a small settlement makes up for the shame you carry. I still have your secret. I still have the proof of your instability." He straightened up, his expensive suit now looking rumpled and pathetic. He pulled out the folded photocopy of Layla's trauma journal from his inner pocket. He was going for one last, desperate act of emotional destruction. "This is what will follow you. This is the truth of your panic, your fear, your weakness." He threw the paper down onto the table with contempt. Layla didn't flinch. She simply picked up the single sheet of paper. It looked insignificant, a ghost of the private torment she had channeled into her work. "That paper, Nathan," Layla said, holding it lightly between two fingers. "That is not my weakness. That is the blueprint for my victory. I turned that fear into the most secure, meticulous planning this company has ever seen. You stole an idea, I built a fortress." Before security arrived, Sterling lunged forward, not toward Layla but toward the table where he had left his briefcase. The security guards, alerted by Harrington, moved quickly. Sterling, however, was determined. He shoved a guard aside and grabbed his briefcase, fumbling with the latch. "You won't get the rest of it," he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Layla knew what was in the case: the rest of the company phones, hard drives, and physical documents he had intended to destroy later. He was desperate to erase the evidence linking him to the reputation management firm and the specific financial logs Anya had just exposed. Anya Bell, maintaining her terrifying calm, leaned forward and pressed a small, discreet button under the table. The boardroom doors instantly locked, and the room's main lights dimmed to an emergency standby setting. "He's destroying evidence," Anya announced, her voice echoing in the sudden quiet. "Secure the data, gentlemen." Sterling, blinded by rage and defeat, didn't notice the security team closing in. He smashed his briefcase down on the table, frantically pulling out a handful of papers and a small external drive. He fumbled for a lighter, intending to burn the physical files right there in the boardroom. The security team tackled him immediately. The chaos was contained swiftly, professionally. The external drive skittered across the floor, landing near Layla's feet. As the guards wrestled Sterling out of the room, Layla watched the entire spectacle. He was screaming threats about lawsuits and reputations, but his power was already gone. He was a small, broken man being hauled away by the consequences of his own greed. Once the door was unlocked and Sterling was gone, the silence that returned was profound. The board members looked shell-shocked. Mr. Davies turned to Layla and Anya. "Mrs. Bell, Miss Dixon, thank you. You have saved this company from both financial and criminal disaster." The press release will be issued tonight detailing Mr. Sterling's immediate dismissal due to gross misconduct and fraud. Anya, ever the strategist, cut to the chase. "The Phoenix Initiative belongs wholly to Layla Dixon. She is the inventor. Her name goes on the patent, and her equity position needs to be immediately secured." Davies nodded quickly. "Absolutely, full credit." "And Miss Dixon, given your exceptional technical and strategic defense of the company, we would like to offer you the position of Chief Innovation Officer with immediate full equity and a seat on the board of directors." Layla looked at the offer. She had come here hoping for justice, for credit, for financial stability for her daughter. She was leaving with the keys to the kingdom. "I accept the credit for the patent," Layla said, her voice clear and strong. "And I will accept the equity and the board seat. But I will decline the Chief Innovation Officer role." The room was surprised. "I will not work in a system that allows this type of exploitation to thrive," Layla explained. "My mission now is bigger than Sterling Technologies. I will take the settlement and the equity, and I will establish my own firm. A firm dedicated to ethical R&D, and more importantly, dedicated to protecting and funding Black women in tech who are targeted by men like Nathan Sterling." Anya smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "Brilliant, Layla. The true legacy is the one you build yourself." Layla picked up the external hard drive that had skittered near her feet and placed it on the table. It contained the final evidence needed to ensure Sterling's legal fate. Then she picked up the single piece of photocopied paper, the journal page. She looked at the words, the raw notes detailing her panic, her past fears, her private shame. She didn't need to burn it. She didn't need to hide it. She slowly and methodically tore the paper into small, confetti-sized pieces. It was no longer a secret. It was a memory. The moment the fear left her body and the fire began, her pain was not a weakness. It was the training she needed to execute the perfect revenge. Layla rose from the table, a new woman. She had transformed the betrayal into empowerment, the pain into power. She had done more than save her career. She had destroyed her betrayer's entire existence and secured the future for herself and her daughter. She had walked in an employee frozen by fear and was walking out a CEO, free from the weight of her past. The fallout was swift and absolute. Within 24 hours, the name Nathan Sterling was synonymous with corporate fraud and personal moral failure. The federal investigation, fueled by the evidence on the external hard drive Layla had recovered and the technical audits provided by Anya Bell's team, ensured Sterling faced severe criminal charges. His personal assets, tainted by years of corporate skimming, were frozen, giving his ex-wife's attorney the leverage needed to secure a devastating divorce settlement. The empire Layla had exposed was dissolving. Layla, however, was in a period of intense construction. She had moved into a stunning new home purchased outright using the massive initial settlement from Sterling Technologies. It wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary with a dedicated, state-of-the-art laboratory where she could truly invent without looking over her shoulder. Her daughter, Nevi, loved the big sunlit room and the sprawling backyard. Layla watched Nevi play, understanding that this freedom, This security was the ultimate form of revenge. The first major piece of news that solidified Layla's triumph was the official patent announcement. Project Phoenix, renamed the Layla Initiative, was filed with Layla Dixon listed as the sole inventor. Sterling Technologies, desperate to save face, issued a massive public apology, citing Layla's brilliance and the catastrophic moral failure of the former CEO. Layla's name went from being a whispered internal controversy to an international headline of innovation and ethical victory. Layla's focus quickly turned to the future. She declined countless offers from venture capitalists trying to lure her back into the established corporate world. She had seen how those systems operated. They were designed to exploit and erase. She would not rebuild a system that hadn't fought for her. Instead, she founded the Athena Collective. It was a research incubator and investment fund dedicated exclusively to funding, mentoring, and legally protecting Black women and women of color in high-tech research and development. Anya Bell was the first member of her board, serving as the chief strategic and legal advisor. Dr. Naomi Vance, free from her NDA and vindicated, became the lead mentor for emerging chemists and engineers. Their first public act was a press conference held not in a sterile corporate office, but in the bright, open atrium of the new Athena Collective headquarters. Layla stood at the podium looking confident and rested. She didn't dwell on the past. She talked about the future. The greatest innovations often come from those who have faced the steepest climb, Layla stated to the packed room of reporters and investors. For too long, the brilliant work of Black women has been stolen, dismissed, or labeled as unstable because the pain we carry from surviving is seen as a weakness. But I stand here today to tell you, she continued, her voice gaining power, that my pain was my fuel. My struggle was my strategic training. Every woman in the Athena Collective is here because she has already won a battle the corporate world never saw. We are not just creating technology. We are creating generational equity and systemic protection. The reaction was immediate. Layla's authenticity and the visible unity of the women on her board resonated deeply. The Athena Collective was instantly oversubscribed with investment and applications from women who had been overlooked, sidelined, or outright exploited by the industry. Layla was not just building a company, she was building a powerful, self-sustaining movement. One quiet afternoon, Layla was in her new home lab reviewing a funding proposal. The entire lab was designed around transparency and integrity. She stopped her work and walked to a small antique writing desk she had placed in the corner. In the drawer, she kept one small item, the original leather-bound journal. The one Nathan Sterling had held up, believing it contained the blueprint of her destruction. She pulled it out and opened it to the page where she had first poured out her terror about losing everything in the bankruptcy. The words were raw, emotional, and almost desperate. But beneath the fear, she had also written a list of rules for survival. Trust only data. Never mix emotion with logistics. Build redundant security layers. Always have an exit strategy. These were the rules that had driven her through Project Nemesis. They were the very rules she had used to dismantle Sterling. Her trauma had not made her unstable. It had made her the most meticulously trained survivor in the room. Layla picked up a pen and wrote a final entry in the journal, a single line at the bottom of the page that had once held her deepest shame. The secret is not the pain you hide. The secret is the strength you find when you realize your pain was the perfect training for the war they never saw coming. She closed the journal. It no longer contained a secret weakness, but the foundational philosophy of her life's work. She placed it back in the drawer. It was finished. Layla returned to her desk, turning her focus back to the funding proposal from a young inventor whose green energy project reminded Layla so much of her own early ambition. She clicked the button to approve the funding, the action feeling less like a transaction and more like a sacred vow. She looked out the window at the vast, promising sky. Nathan Sterling was only a memory, a cautionary tale. Layla Dixon, the black single mother who turned her trauma into the power to destroy an empire, was the new legend. Her success was not just a victory, it was a permanent change to the system. Her soul story was one of ultimate triumph, and that is where Layla Dixon's soul story ends for now. The CEO who thought a black single mother's private pain was a weapon learned the hard way that her pain was actually the perfect fuel for his destruction. She walked into that corporate war frozen by fear, but she walked out a queen of her own empire, having turned her deepest trauma into the most powerful legacy. If you were gripped by Layla's journey from betrayal to ultimate triumph, please let us know in the comments below. Did Nathan Sterling get the justice he deserved? How would you have used your pain to fight back? Don't forget to like this video, share it with a friend, and most importantly subscribe to Black Women's Soul Stories and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next powerful narrative of resilience, revenge, and redemption. Thank you for listening. We will see you in the next story.